Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm going to be taking a look at another high-grade Gquuuuuux kit, and this right here is the XAVIER'S GYAN HYAKUJI-packs, or XAVIE, if you prefer. As usual, this video right here would not have been possible without those awesome people over at Hobby Link Japan, link down there in the description. Now let's check this out. So I'm busting open the box. This definitely feels like it has a little bit more plastic in it than what I've seen with the previous Gquuuuuux releases. Usual Gquuuuuux style manual in here, so information about the Mecha, as well as the pilot if you want to read that yourself. Nice pictures around back showing the gimmicks and cool effects. An overall look of the finished kit when it is finished. And this is your usual kind of fold out pamphlet style high grade manual. This kit has 12 runners, not including the beam sabers, some of which are quite small. We do have a sheet of stickers as well, so let's check them out. So when it does come to the white plastic inside here, this is extremely nice. It does seem to have a little bit of a matte finish to it, so it's not a glossy white, so it does look like it will look extremely unique. From what I can tell by looking at the other white runners, these all seem to have that, so I don't think the kind of finish or texture or color of the white will change throughout the kit. And one thing that's taken me a little bit by surprise is just how big this kit's lance is. For example, this is your regular high-grade Gundam, so as you can see, it is longer than your standard sized mobile suit. I knew it'd be big, but not quite this big. Some more white segments. It seems that we do actually have moving gimmicks for the missile parts of the Gyan shield. The A runner is the multicolored runner, so we do actually have a somewhat light gray. I'm not sure if that's for mixing up the white or mixing up the gray. So we do have gray, white, and light gray. We also have some piping in here as well, which I think matches this particular gray right here, but it might be a slightly different color or texture. It doesn't seem as glossy. Cool. The beam sabers are the chubby short style. These are from 2005. Some light gray for the feet. It's interesting actually separating these out. Does that mean we're going to be seeing the other variants of the Gyan sometime in future? Some more of the darker gray here too. So this is going to be one nicely separated monochrome kit. And here we've got an absolutely super dark gray. So yeah, a very grayscale kit, but with a lot of nice graduation between the colors. We also do have C-clips for the moving sections we're going to be seeing on the shield. Some more of that nice dark gray, so this is for the kind of inner framey-esque parts of this kit. We do have some standard looking waist sections here. These look like they might be ball joints again. Some more light gray, including the hands, as well as some more tanks. And we do have this nice little inclusion here, which is one of those smaller supplementary style action bases. This more than likely is for supporting that massive lance. And probably immediately what kind of looked like the most disappointing aspect about this kit, all of the gold aspects are stickers. Now these do look kind of nice. They're an almost kind of green gold. It might actually be the lighting in the room here making it look a little bit greener than it is. Maybe it's a super yellow gold, maybe it is. But overall there is quite a few of these, sadly. So jumping on into the build, and we're starting off with the legs. So as you can see, we've kind of got that classic Gyan shape, just modernized, or should I even say changed, for this particular series. I'm definitely loving the additional detail, like the kind of thruster up here with a little bit of a bar around it. We've got some piping around the legs. The articulation overall is decent. The knee does move independently to the actual overall movement on the central aspect, which is nice. But I guess the biggest letdown, like we've seen so far, is the stickers. Now, these are a little bit awkward. These ones, not so bad. I've added a couple onto the arms, and those were a little bit more problematic. But I'll get to those when I get to those. Simple ankle too. When it comes to the build of the legs, it's straightforward overall. That's a 3-piece hip joint like we usually see that attaches down into the inner frame of the upper leg, which has 2 aspects to it, and then you start to pile on the armor. Now, I will mention at this point you do have to use one of these stickers. These are the new style sticker that we've been seeing with Gquuuuuux so far, so they're a little stretchy. They definitely bend over curves a little better than the foils of the past, but they're still difficult enough to apply. This big one right here, this is the easiest of the bunch really, but there are some later on that aren't so great. Some great detailing on the front and the back of the upper leg. We pile on the pipes then, one of which goes over the sticker we just adhered. The lower leg just builds together in the usual kind of way. There is no inner frame inside of this, so it's not a full inner frame high grade. And finally then the foot's just 3 pieces, pops together like so, and then you're done. So there we go, a pair of legs overall very nice. A little bit on the plain side somewhat. Maybe some pen lining will sort that out, but there isn't really a lot of pen line details on this. Guess we'll see once we're done. So next up in here we've got the Gundam right here, and if you're wondering why I have it in this mid-jigger right here, this is a little bit of a kind of stand. Or should I say, tiny little vice. This is by Dispe, I highly recommend. But the reason for that I will get to in a minute. Anyway, the way this builds up, we've got 3 pieces for the actual dark section in the middle, pop together easily. The armor then pops on, and the side skirtings are interesting long pieces that attach via pegs. Now, next up here is the stickers, and just like the rest of the kit, the stickers are a bit of a nightmare to attach. You almost feel like you need 3 hands sometimes. That is what this is, your third hand. This will hold the piece in position for you when you actually get that sticker perfectly into place. These are very weird stickers, by the way. They actually stretch if you pull on them too much, and then they're too long for the section you're attaching them on. So be careful. Don't stretch them too much. But yeah, this then is what we've got in the end. So grabbing those legs and popping them on, it's just the simple attachment of sticking them in via pegs, not balls, so I was wrong there. Just like so. So far looking interesting without a doubt. So next up in here we've got the torso, and so far so good. So we have a nice joint in here which is attached in the old high-grade barzam kind of way, so it moves back and forward. This also can move up and down ever so slightly too, and we do have the side to side in there, which is nice as well. Now when it comes to the build-up of this, again pretty much the same. It builds up very nicely on the inside. 2 joints attach onto this section here, so you've got a downwards pointing pivot as well as a frontwards one with ball joints on both. Ball joints again for the attachment of the shoulder joints into the front of the chest. The piece we just built attaches in there, and at this point you're going to have to grab your third hand again because there are some more decals to apply. Now these ones are pretty easy. There's just these kind of almost V-shape or chevron shaped gold pieces which attach onto the side of the chest, and a Xeon logo. Very simple. Then we attach some lower armor on, as well as the cuff section for around the neck. Again, this right here is what we got, and it is a ball joint attachment into the body we had, looking a little something like that right there. So moving then onto the arms, and this is one I built a little while ago, and as you can see I had a little bit of trouble right here with the decals, and I'll mention that as to why, well I guess right now. There is a lot of these pinstripe gold decals. Again, they do work out quite well considering stickers. They do grip quite well, but what happened here is when I was removing them off the sticker sheet, and you can kind of see the little bit of a mess that's going on right here. They weren't fully cut out, it seems. So while pulling, it got caught and it got stretched, and it's stretched long. So not like foil stickers, which are kind of paper backed. These are very rubbery and will stretch and warp out of shape if you do abuse them a little too much. So keep that in mind, especially for the thinner ones. Probably just going to swap this shoulder with the other one. But anyway, we've got a shoulder arm which moves around ever so slightly. A ball joint falls off easy. And the usual, well, not usual, it's just a single point bend right there, single point bend, and a rotation. Regular wrist too. When it comes to the actual build of the arm, same as pretty much what we would have seen before. That is the shoulder joint is one of those 3-piece joints. Once again, you're going to have to grab your third hand in order to attach on some stickers. These are the ones that I found probably the most awkward because you have to line 2 of them up, but in the end it's not so bad if you take your time and don't stretch them or anything like that. After that, you need to add some extra bits onto the shoulder joint. The build-up here is very irregular. This is something definitely unusual, especially in the upper arm. The wrist is attached in by a little bit of a peg, and when you build a hand, it does actually have a wrist pivot in it, which is great for a kit that does have a lance. It all attaches together, and then you've got some more stickers, 2 in total, 1 on the upper arm and 1 on the forearm. Well, that's 4 in total for the arm, I should say, not including the shoulder armor. And there we go, 2 arms are complete. Time to get them attached on. So they attach via ball joints into these cups, just like so. That is absolutely the wrong arm. So yeah, they pop on like so, and like so. And I will say the shoulder armor attachment is almost Iron-Blooded Orphans level of wanting to fall off all the time. But overall, so far, not too bad. Regular backpack attachment in case I forget to mention it sometime later. Next off in here, we've got the head, which is quite simple, really. So it is 2 parts inside of what's going on right here. The first part is the mono eye, so you do need a sticker for on that. It pops via a ball joint, oddly enough, down into the part below it. And then it's just armor from the back, from the bottom, and from the top. Once it's finished, this right here, that is what you get. Reminds me of that Iron-Blooded Orphans kit. What was it, the Oatlande or something similar? Next up, we've got a very simple backpack. It's just 2 parts snapped together. We've got a bunch of thrusters to pop onto that, and an attachment point around back. Speaking of attaching, it's your usual 2-point adapter, pops on like so. So moving on to the equipment, and this is one of those kits that, in a way, the mobile suit is only half the build, and you're doing so much building when it actually comes to the weapons. A little bit of an exaggeration, but you're building so much, especially in the shield. You cap off each of the outer sections of the shield, pop it down onto the darker underside. Then you start C-clipping on a whole bunch of opening and closing sections just like so, and then you lock them into position finally with these little pieces. Now this does look like it would be something that's a little bit on the pedantic or boring side, but this is so much fun to build. There's a cool handle made of multiple joints around back which just attaches in, and speaking of over the top, we've got the big old lance too. Now I will mention straight off the bat, this does have massive gates on it, so be careful while cleaning this up and cutting it out because these are unusually large in some places. Two halves attached together, some grey piping, a rear aspect and a bunch of verniers pop around back. Finally, we've got a handle that slides on in underneath just like so. This thing is massive. And of course, just like the rest of the kit, these right here are subject to a whole ton of stickers, this top line and these bits right here. I'm just not going to subject you to that. On to the actual review. So now jumping on into the aesthetics, and there is the Gyan finally finished. Now I will mention I did do a little bit of panel lining. Not really a whole huge amount because there isn't a lot of actual panel lines and detail molded into the surface of this particular model kit. It is definitely a little bit of a plainer looking surfaced kit than we've seen from a lot of the kits that would have come out recently. So there is a lot of little indents here and there, what look like tiny little thrusters. All of these I did panel line with the standard simple felt tip style panel liner pen. You just scribble it in, wipe it off, simple. For some of the pinstripes and some of the more kind of intricate detailed sections, I did use the pour type or the extra thin type pan liners because they fill in big spaces and complex shapes very effectively. And one thing that they actually do, in case you don't know, is this. Depending on the actual size of a panel line, this right here is what you'd get from a felt tip style panel liner, so it is fully filled in. But if you do work quite quickly with the flow style or the extra thin, you get almost like a little bit of a pinstripe around the outside and a little bit of a almost white section towards the inside. So it's not just a solid fill and does look pretty good. So when it does come to the aesthetics, overall this is definitely a picture-perfect representation of Xavier's Gyan. Now, between this and the actual art, which I'll get to a little bit later, there are a couple of differences about it when it comes to some proportions as well as some colors, but overall, this does look fantastic. Jumping into the full 360-degree spin so you can see every angle of it yourself, everything here turned out amazing. So this is monochromatic overall, which does disguise to a certain degree that this is based on a, well, typical Gundam Gyan. It does give it a definitely regal kind of feel with those golden decals on there, and as you can see, the decals have turned out quite well. These are the kind of almost like brand new style Bandai decals which are rubberized as opposed to foil on paper or thick plasticky foils. I'll talk a little bit about those in a second, but overall they did work out quite well and blend in and don't look too stickery. The only other two stickers that are on it are the mono eye, the Xeon symbol, but overall everything works out well. The light shade of grey in here is glossy. The white in here is pure pristine matte white, so you do have multiple different textures, especially with the nice reflective gold of the stickers. Overall nice, but there are a couple of color inaccuracies and a couple of kind of proportion things to it, which we'll talk about right now. So anyway, there it is standing side by side with the actual art from the show, and you would assume because they use CG models in Gquuuuuux that this would be identical, that they'd actually just take the CG model from the actual show and adapt it into the model kit, but that isn't necessarily the case because there are some design differences between the two. Overall, it is a very good representation. We do miss a couple of color aspects on it that are missing, but overall what you do have here, besides the color inaccuracies, is pretty much 99% the same as what we see in the show. If it's not a little bit more chunkier looking in the model kit, but then again, that could just be angles. But to me, the body seems a little chunkier and the arms a little bit narrower. So of course some aspects are going to differ slightly. For example, the thrusters around back are a little bit simpler on the actual high grade as opposed to the in-anime model, which makes sense, but we are missing some gold around the bars on these, which you'll have to detail up yourself, as well as some white on the tubes around the legs. This continues up onto the backpack where we are missing some gold on the little bars up on those as well, not a big deal. But around front, they've pretty much nailed it besides a couple of things. The inside of those beam saber handles which are sticking out on the hips, those are meant to be in grey, and there is meant to be a little bit of white on the pipes, and those little thrusters or whatever in the front of the legs are meant to be a little bit darker. Again, tiny details up, not really that big of a deal. Overall though, it is absolutely beautiful. When it does come to the actual detailing on this, Bandai did go for a more kind of like, how to say, it's a more second-class citizen of Gunpla really compared to Gundams. we don't actually see the same sort of nice layering that we would see on a Gundam. For example, back to these little guys on the sides of the leg, these are meant to be in grey, but what Bandai usually do on Gundams is allow some grey to come from underneath like so, like we're seeing on the leg of the red Gundam right here, and popping through both here and up here on the Gquuuuuux. So even though it is an absolutely gorgeous high grade, it is missing those sort of premium little touches. When it does come to the model kit sins, aka nubs, seams, and mold lines, usually I haven't been saying those a lot for kits lately because they're not really present. When it comes to the nubs, nothing all that big of a deal. They clean up very nicely, especially on the soft white plastic. However, there are some unseemly mold lines on this kit, especially on the one-piece shoulders. These are ridiculously rough and noticeable. Of course, easy to clean up. They're on a open surface, so just hit that with a little bit of sandpaper or something similar and you'll have that cleaned off in no time, but it is worth noting. There are also noticeable seams right up the fronts of the legs as well, which is quite old school, and it is in the forearms as well to a degree, but again, nothing killer here really that a couple of quick fixes won't fix. When it comes to the decals, we do have quite a big sheet. This is what the sheet looked like before I used them, but they're not that bad, funnily enough. These are quite impressive. Beware of their stretchy nature though, because they are easy to damage. They're not as strong, would I say, as some foil stickers used to be, but they are a little bit more forgiving and stretchy to a degree without breaking them in a good way, so you can kind of stretch them onto the kit and they'll almost adhere with kind of a tension. The pinstripes, like the ones you're seeing right there on the shoulder, these are actually pulled off with a little bit of a clear border towards the top, but this kind of sticker doesn't really show the border too well. Even these tiny little pinstripes just look very nice. The shade of gold has an almost kind of greenish shadow to it, which gives it a very interesting finish. And overall, I thought these were going to be an absolute nightmare, but they weren't. Even in the build, I did say I was going to cut away in order to stick the ones on the weaponry, but they just worked out quite well. These sections right here, these are one piece each with a clear part in between, but you wouldn't even really notice. They look good. There's one here on the lance as well. As you can see, the gaps in it are very smartly done, so it looks like multiple stickers. Overall, this is quite good. They're also easy to attach and line up perfectly because of their kind of flexible, rubbery, and forgiving nature. However, this nature does make them a little bit delicate in a kind of different way. For example, they stretch in a rubbery style way. So I'm just going to take this whole thing off to give you a bit of an idea. So this is what they're like. So they do have a stretchiness to them, so you can stretch them over the surface and stick them on. But they kind of hit their elastic limit pretty quickly and then will absolutely kind of stretch and tear quite easily. So even though they are very fancy and rubbery, they are very, very delicate. So be careful and they will look phenomenal. And their adherence around curved surfaces is next level. Bandai has definitely come up with a brand new, impressive style of sticker here. I don't hate these, I like them a lot. It really does make these old school style, like paper-backed foils just seem so, I don't know, primitive in comparison. So jump now into the size comparison. There it is beside the high-grade Gquuuuuux, the high-grade Gelgoog, high-grade Police Saku, high-grade Red Gundam, real-grade Shining Gundam, Gundam Aerial, D Gundam First, high-grade Exia, and the high-grade Gundam EX. So now jumping into the accessories, and there's a whole ton of awesome stuff inside this box. Awesome, massive stuff at that. As well as the Gyan itself, we've got that absolutely gigantic Hyakuji lance. Almost as big, but with a lot more going on inside of it, is the Gyan shield. On top of that, then we've got the beam sabers, 2 of those, as well as alternate handles for their stored mode. And we do have an included small stand here as well for using with the absolutely massive lance. So first up in here, when it comes to the hands, we don't have any options besides the ones that are in here, but they are very nice when it comes to holding hands. Great detail. There's a round on the other side, so it will be hard to match these if you do want to go out and buy some alternate expressive hands, but one pretty cool aspect about these is they do actually have a hinge joint which allows the hand to rotate just like so, which is exactly what you want when it comes to a kit like this, which holds weapons for fencing and lances, so you'll get some nice angled poses with them. So the next weapon that we have in here is the lance. Now this is ridiculously over the top and for the most part very nicely color separated and part separated. As for the colors we don't have, there is meant to be a dark grey running up the inside of these little trough sections here, which would be easy enough to detail up because it is recessed. So there is the example of how dark it is meant to be inside of that. The biggest disappointment probably would be this section right here, because this is in a light gray, but because this is predominantly made out of 2 pieces, half and half for the length of this actual part, that does mean these are just in white, so they will need to be detailed up to be a light shade of gray. We do have the stand included, which is very, very handy, and it does have an adapter for any 3mm stand, so you can use it with whatever you want. And when it does come to attaching this onto the Gyan, we do have a simple handle in here that just pulls out like so you can get it attached on first, instead of messing with such a big weapon. So getting this attached into the hand is very simple. You just pop off the hand, open it like a sandwich. This is the ham in the sandwich. Throw it in, make a sandwich, and you're done. It then slides on into the actual Hyakuji just like so. Simple and effective. And when I actually threw it onto the Gyan, I was shocked by the fact that you do not necessarily need the stand, at least not out of box. Maybe over time it might loosen up a little bit, but this kit is rock solid and is supporting this mammoth beast with no issues at all. Just getting into a pose, even with the arm fully extended, which, as far as I know, this particular Gyan does not do. It usually has it tied into the body. It's still able to hold it up, get it on a robust enough stand like what I've got right here, which is one of Bandai's newer action bases, and you will have no issues. I am impressed by the strength of the joints on this kit. Looking good. So next up in here, and probably the most impressive accessory inside the box, and honestly might be the most impressive accessory I've seen in quite some time, is the Gyan shield. This is so nicely designed. Around back we've got that super dark plastic, a really nice handle attachment point with a lot of articulation, but it's what's going on under the hood, or should I say under these segments, that makes it so nice. These build up so nicely, and what we get then is this opening segment just like so. All of these individual little aspects just open out just like so, which is so cool. They can go as far as that point. They actually go just to where they're meant to go, and that is all, which is nice too for posing. This is where the mines or the hide bombs are stored, so when it opens up like this, it is ready to fire. That just works so well. It's got so many nice layers to it. And then jumping around to the back, we've got this super impressive attachment point. So it can rotate at that point, and it has 1, 2, 3 points of actual hinges. So let's get this attached to check out what it does. When it comes to attaching this, it's the same as we saw with the lance, so that's sandwich time for the hand, and it pops on in a unique kind of way onto this little handle section on the middle aspect. Then you attach the hand on like so, and then the far end with the peg attaches into the back of the arm, and you've got this big rig now attached onto the Gyan, which means you can fold back the shield onto the back of the forearm for defensive poses just like so, or rotate it out in front of the hand to open this up and start firing out those hide bombs. Very nice design, and again, rock solid, and still I'm finding absolutely zero need for the included stand. I mean, I've seen kits with less ability to hold on to their weapons that didn't come with one of these, but this kit so far isn't really requiring it. Also, if you did use one of these stands, you could just take the arm off, pop it into this, and attach it on so you don't have multiple stands going on for your permanent pose up on the shelf. Next up in here, we've got the pair of beam sabers, the usual kind of Gyan fencing style. There is the handles, definitely unique in a shade of white. There should be grey in underneath. So when it comes to attaching on the beam sabers, you can just remove the handle and slide them into the hand, or sandwich style them on, whichever you like. We do have a very nice hinge joint in the wrist, so that means you can get them into nice stabbing fencing poses like so, and when they're popped on, they look just like that. So nice, posable, and looking good. When they're not in use, you just pop off the beam, take the longer handle off because we do have a retracted version of the handle to pop in, and then they mount onto the hips just like we would have seen throughout the review so far. Nice design. You can even leave the longer handle there to display the Gyan about to draw. So finally now jumping onto the articulation, and just the usual comment on the build, and this is rock solid and won't fall out of any pose that you pop it in. However, there is a couple of kind of awkward joints and aspects to it. For example, the shoulders pop off very simply because they're just a simple ball joint. The actual arms, if you move them around quite a bit, will work their way out again, kind of awkwardy ball joint about them, and the barzum style joint in the torso, if you move it around a lot as well, tends to kind of pop. So while moving it around a lot, it is one that tends to disassemble itself ever so slightly. However, if you do pay attention to all of those joints while posing and are aware of the fact that they will do them, it's not the biggest deal. But when you're in the middle of eking out a cool pose and then something fails, it can be a little annoying. When it does come to the usual pose, this poses quite well, but it is a little bit limited at the lower body. The hips, the knees, and the ankles are quite limited, but the upper body has great ab crunch, great shoulders, a decent elbow, and a great neck too. So overall, you do get lots up top, not too much in the legs. This right here is what we get out of the usual pose, and as you can see, it is limited somewhat towards the legs, and there is one real critical kind of thing I find sometimes while posing it, and that is this little joint, or not joint, cool thruster back here. This does actually clash immediately with the back section here, and can't raise up any, well, higher than just normal standing leg. But anyway, let's check everything out. So checking out all of the articulation, first up we've got the neck. There's the head looking all the way up. You can kind of knock this back with that antenna. There it is all the way down, so it does move out nicely. One more time, there's all the way up, all the way down, and there's that side to side, so not too bad. Also, we do have probably one of the weirdest moving mono eyes I've ever seen. So this does move around, and you can turn it side to side. It is on a ball joint, but it is a little bit hard to do with just your fingers. Maybe you would need something like a tweezers, but it does move around on a ball joint. When it comes to the shoulders, I do notice a lot in a lot of Bandai's newer kits. There's like limited articulation. There's some tabs in here stopping this from literally pulling out of the body, so you can mod it to come out a little bit further. It probably affects the structural integrity, but you can get a little bit more. As it stands like this little cup right here doesn't move around too much without modding it. With the shoulder off for clarity and peace of mind, there is what we do get right here. There is the full spin all the way around, and you can move the arm up to about that point right there. The shoulder is attached on via a ball joint with a little bit of a notch out of it, so that does mean the notch allows it to tilt upwards quite a bit out of the way the actual articulation of the arm, so you can get all of it. Full rotation then at the upper arm, single point elbow bend, but it is incredibly good. The wrist here does have the hinge like we saw before, but otherwise it's just a standard ball joint. Backpack here is on a simple hinge. Very nice ab crunch. There it is all the way to the front and all the way to the back. So there is multiple points of movement here, but the barzum joint can fall off if you move it around a little too much, like it has right now. As for the side to side, we've got quite a bit in here on that rocking joint. That's nice. Decent rotation here as well. These side skirts aren't the greatest. They're just attached by a peg, which allows them to kind of roll up and roll down. And these are things that can pop out quite often too, like that. There is no shifting mechanism inside the hips, so there's the kick all the way up to the front. Not bad. It's super limited out to the back because of these little guys, which do pivot, by the way, which is quite cool. But the rack or the cage section around it does get in the way. There is the splits that we get in here, not bad, not great. As for the bend of the knee, there we go. It is a double joint bend, so this does move somewhat independent to the whole bend because it is on the central joint. One more time, there is the leg straight, and there it is bent all the way up. When it comes to the ankles, these are incredibly blocked. There's the up and down, and there is the side to side pivot, which is not the greatest overall. It's okay at the bottom, quite good at the top, which nets us a decently poseable kit, especially at the upper body. So anyway, that right there is it for the review of the high-grade XAVIER'S GYAN HYAKUJI-packs. Overall, this is a very good kit, and it is X Gold tier. There is the little bit of a table showing everything it got ranked on, from aesthetics to articulation to accessories to build, and as you can see, it is the accessories that definitely shone with this kit. The lance is pretty cool, even though it could do with some more color separation on it, which does bring it back a little bit, but that shield is absolutely out of this world awesome. It's got so much going on, full articulation in the opening segments, and the arm that attaches it onto the Gyan is absolutely perfect, and it is solid enough to hold all of its accessories at once. Beam Saber's nice too, would have been nice to have more hands, but the hands in here are fantastic. Aesthetics wise, it looks great. The stickers in here are impressive for stickers. There are some minor color inaccuracies, and there are some mold lines which will need cleaning up. Articulation wise, great up in the upper body, not so great down in the legs, quite limited actually. Overall, when it comes to the build too, this was a very nice simple build, built up very nicely. Attaching the stickers on is not a lot of fun, even though they do work well, you almost feel like you do need 3 arms. Besides that though, it does build up nicely, and everything is very solid. Overall, great kit. If you love yourself a Gyan, this is a very nice Gyan. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more gunpla reviews. I got mine through Hobby Link Japan, link in the description. And as always, I will see you next time. It wouldn't be the end of the video without special thanks to each and every single one of you guys for watching my videos, and special thanks to the channel members and the members over on Patreon, including Caleb, Engelhardt, Joe, RG59061, Scotty Thomas, Simon, and Van Fawn.